This is Brian with Historic Woodwork, and we are going to demonstrate the installation of crown molding. Let's get to work. We're here in Seminole Heights again, working on a house that was built in 1956. We're at the home of Jon Docs, world famous runner. Jon has run a number of different marathons, and I must say I'm very envious. You actually ran a couple of 100-mile endurance runs as well as a number of Ironman competitions. And how many marathons have you run?
Probably about 100. I don't know, I lost track around 50.
Was it your aspiration to run one in every state?
Yeah, but now I don't think I'll be able to do that.
I admire you for doing it, and I'm sure you're going to continue to do it as long as you can. What we're going to be talking about today is the crown molding. It's 5 1/4 in width, and it goes up at an angle. This is going up against an embossed metal ceiling, and it makes it somewhat a bit of a challenge because the metal is so thin that it has a tendency to wave or undulate. So we are going to talk a little bit about how to cut this 5 1/4 inch crown molding. And you need to understand what exactly it is you're dealing with. So let's make this the ceiling, and we will make this the wall. You have to take a segment of the molding you're about to use and see exactly on this square where it situates itself. And it just happens to be 4 3/8 of an inch down the wall and 3 inches across the ceiling. Now I'm going to draw a line here, and that is the angle at which the molding is situated on the wall and against the ceiling. You can cut it on a big saw like this, or you can cut it like this, and this is how great-granddad used to do it. Just take the simplest saw, and the way great-granddad would cut this would be just like this. There's what we would call a left cut, and there's what we call a right cut. When you put them together, you have either an outside corner or an inside corner. This works great when you have a perfectly square corner, but when you don't, what I resort to doing is something called coping. And we make the cut, and then what I do is I will trace the profile of that cut with a thin little saw called a coping saw. I'm going to start by making a relief cut. And notice how I have tilted my coping saw at about a 50-degree angle. I'm going to make another little relief cut here. And another one here. And I'm going to make a relief cut here. Now again, I'm going to tilt the saw considerably at what I think is about a 50-degree angle. And I'm just going to trace the outline of the molding. Again, I'm tilting my saw as far as I possibly can. This piece will fit into the previous piece, and if the corner is not square, there's a little bit of play. We can adjust it for the imperfection in the wall. Well, this is the room we're going to be installing it in, and it's a small room, and eventually it's going to have the same metal ceiling that the kitchen had. Normally I would install the crown molding after I put the ceiling in. Well, the electrician has to extend this box for a fixture, and the air conditioning guy has to extend the vent. Instead, what I've opted to do is put these little spacers around the perimeter of the room, which are about the same thickness as the tin ceiling panels. And I'm just going to install the crown molding and butt it up to those spacers and tack it in place, and then I can remove those spacers one at a time and slip the ceiling tiles in place. The first thing I'm going to do is put up a small piece of crown molding. I'm going to call it a slip, and this is just temporary. I know that it has to come down 4 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to make a mark, and I'm going to put this little slip right on that mark, and I'm just going to tack it in place. All I need to do is take a measurement from the adjacent wall to this point, and that gives me the dimension of the first piece. Now, John, are you ready to assist me? Hold the tape approximately there, and I'm measuring 74.5 to this point. All I merely need to do now is just cut the butt end off and tack it in place. We're going to make our first cut starting at this point. At 74.5. I'm just going to make that cut. I'm going to make a secondary cut right here. I'm just going to chip off the corner at about a 15-degree angle so that once it's up in place, I can get my finger behind it to adjust the cut. Then I'm going to take a bar of soap and I'm going to smear some soap on the back of it so that it will slip into place when we nail the next piece. All right, so John's making a mark where this piece is roughly going to sit. off in this corner, and we're going to end up in this corner. I'm not nailing anything permanently, I'm just tacking it into place. Now I'm certain that it will stay in place while we measure the next piece. So you can let loose of that now, John. All right. Now, the reason that I made this little relief cut is so that I can get my finger behind it and adjust it. This next piece is going to be 98.5. You see I've coped the right-hand side. All I need to do is make a simple cut on the far end. The ladder is supporting the other end of this rather nicely. One of the reasons I'm not permanently nailing it is once I get it in place and I'm satisfied that it's perfect, then I'll come back with an air nailer and hasten it along. Now we've left the last roughly half of the piece, roughly 4 feet, is flopping loose, and there's nothing to stop me or anyone from getting my finger behind it and pulling it down to that mark. Another reason that I don't permanently tack this into place is because maybe I want to pull that nail out so John can hit that mark a little easier. There we go. Now here's a situation. The joint is not coming together the way I'd like. So let's take this down. I need to get my finger behind it and twist it up. See, there's the mark. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to go above the mark. Now it's more or less a perfect fit. Remember, I put that little slip of molding in there? Well, I'm going to take that out. As I said, this is the final piece, or the closure piece. We're going to put the end of this where that little slip was. There we have it. And that takes care of it. I'm Brian with Historic Woodwork, and I hope you are able to accomplish exactly what we've done here today. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.